Hey, I'm Chris DeSantis with Shorty Title Company. We're a local title insurance company for both residential and commercial transactions. Our closest office is Second and Market. We also have 18 other offices located all of New Jersey and Eastern Pennsylvania.
Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Heller with Brown & Brown of Pennsylvania. Not to be confused with title, we do real estate insurance, so property and casualty. When you're developing or investing in real estate, you not only need insurance, but you need the right insurance. So that's where we come in. We'll do a review. We'll consult with you, kind of fill in the blanks in terms of what you should be looking for in your contracts with GCs. If you're developing, taking that further, again, we're a brokerage, so we will shop on your behalf and find the best programs available in the marketplace. Again, Matt Heller, Brown & Brown, Pennsylvania. Thanks.
Hey guys, how are you? Anthony Catalano. I work for Alpha Funding. We're a hard money lender out of New Jersey, but we also work in Pennsylvania, New York, and a couple other states. We'd love to talk to you about funding and doing some deals with you.
Hi guys, my name is Michelle Wong. I have a business podcast called Work Your Money Podcast, and basically we discuss real estate, investing, anything that's trending in the real estate market, and also we interview entrepreneurs on our show.
And Michelle's being pretty modest. We're going to be hosting a live podcast for 2.5 days down at the Triple Play Convention on the floor. Who's going to Triple Play this year that's a real estate professional? Does anybody know what real Triple Play Convention is? That's where you get CE, build out some sources of real estate professionals, and meet a lot of other real estate agents. A lot of fun. Goes for 3 days. We'll be on the convention floor interviewing a lot of the real estate professionals live on the podcast. Again, my name is Joe Scarice. I'm with First Trust Bank. I'm a mortgage lending specialist. Been down in the Philadelphia market for about 8 years now, and really building my network out through these type of events. All these events are on Meetup. So if you find my bald, shiny face, look in that Meetup, and I have all the events there. We do anything from a Friday morning breakfast networking event from 8 to 9:30 every Friday right upstairs. We have 5 subgroups for Diversified Investors Group and HAPCO members throughout the greater Philadelphia market. Like tomorrow night, we have another event here for DIG and HAPCO members. We also have Saturday workshops with educational subjects. We also extend van tours for rehab. They'll go through various neighborhoods and get educated on what's going on in the specific neighborhoods. We have 3 in the spring, 3 in the fall. So if there's any questions about events or collaborating an event or holding an event within the network that we have, and we have podcasts. Actually, one of the podcasts is with Brian Crocodales, and his podcast, it's on Mondays on the Meetups. Please let me know, shoot me an email, shoot me a call. I'll be more than happy to work with you in building out your network and your business. And like I said, this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., we are having a live podcast here for real estate agents talking about the 2018 real estate market and what they see coming. And we'll be moderating that with Michelle, myself, and Maurice. Where'd Maurice go? Raise your hand. There we go. So I'd like to make some great introductions to, one, the moderator this evening, putting the questions and posing them to the contractors. I personally reached out to these individuals to come out here to provide some form of forecast of what's going on in the market. And I think it's really important for us to know, maybe we're not doing what they're doing, but we could feed into where they're projecting a lot of their current projects and where they're going and where they think they're going price point wise for rent or sale. Sandy Smith from Philly Magazine, the real estate editor. We have Brian Crocodales from Design Blends. We have John Pack from Howe Properties. We have Ryan Spack from the Spack Group. And we also have Paul Bream from Locale Development. So I know that we're short one microphone, so one of you guys are going to have to be kind enough to share. There's some posted questions. And after Sandy's done with some of his questions, he's going to offer it out to the audience to pose some questions to our panel. I'd like to just real quick give a thanks to Bill Marciani, who volunteered upstairs checking a lot of you guys in, and Karen Rogers over there checking you in as well. So if you have any questions on anything else, we'll be here till about 8:30, 9 o'clock. Enjoy the food, the beer, and the commentary this evening. Sandy, it's all yours.
I believe so. Well, welcome everybody. Hi. We hope this session proves informative and enlightening. And I'm just going to cut to the chase and start off with the first question about how you do what you do. How do you find, or where do you source your deals from? Do you use agents? Do you use off-market information? You have any proprietary research? Take it away.
Yeah, all of that.
All of it?
Everything
Okay.
you said.
Yeah.
That's a cheating answer.
Yes.
Yeah, all of that.
So again, I'm Brian from Design Blends. We're affiliated with a company called Oakmont Acquisitions. They do off-market deals. I'm sure maybe some of you are on their list. But what we're seeing is essentially everyone has access to the same information, right? It's like a Mark Zuckerberg, but it's how you use that information. Everyone can go pull a probate list. Everyone can go pull a tax lien, start to see what's going on. And the city's actually, if you guys aren't aware, they're pulling the Atlas information. It's kind of going to give an even playing field, I feel like, for the whole city. But wholesalers can be your friend. Just people you meet throughout the city, they can, refer deals over to you. But it's just how you process that information is what makes, finding deals easier. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of the same. I mean, we don't have a Oakmont guy coming to us, but for the most part, a lot of agents, commercial brokers, things like that. So we do a lot of multifamily. So it's all about building that relationship. How do you get those, before somebody else might get them? And not only that, can you act quick enough to get them? And more importantly, what value can you add to those deals that others might not, right? So how creative can you become with a deal? Whereas if somebody else just looks at it and goes, okay, here's the price, here's what I can do, and it either works or it doesn't. Well, you have to be able to have the patience and the know-how to go through the zoning process. What else can I do? Can I subdivide? Can I sell some? Can I rent these out? Go through a whole process. A lot of people say, oh, I just need to build bigger and I'll make more money. A lot of times, because the construction costs are so high right now, how can you actually build a little bit smaller and still offer something, a benefit to still have equal rents? So if you can do things that way, to think a little bit outside the box and act quickly, I think that's one of the best options. So a lot come from the brokers, and other ones are how can you structure a partnership? We have a great relationship with a lot of other developers who say, you know what, this job's just a little bit too big for us, or I don't have the construction know-how just yet. So we'll partner with those guys, walk them through, and the next one they're probably doing on their own. But a lot of times they already have the deal, and we'll come in and we'll do a joint venture and make things happen that way.
As much as I'm Ryan from SPAC Group. As much as it might seem like it's some special sauce, John and Brian are very correct. The information is accessible to all of us. You, me, all of us sitting up here. It's how you use that information and then how you critically think about that information. So for us, we have utilized our involvement in the community that we're based in to source most of the projects that we've done over the last 2 years. I cannot actually think of a project in the last couple of years that we've actually used a realtor on, because the projects have been brought to us either by somebody in the community who wanted to sell a property or was looking to hold that property in their family but wanted to reap the benefits of it and knew that it wasn't meeting its goals. And so there was a partnership to be made where we brought experience to the table that they did not have, and they brought the land without us having to fork over any dollars. There's a project right now that we're wrapping up. It came to us on a napkin. Literally got handed to one of my employees on a napkin. Somebody ran into an issue, they needed to sell one, and instead of me just calling and saying, let's buy this one, it was, let's meet for coffee. Let's learn about what you need and what I want, and let's meet. And so we ended up buying the properties for more than they were worth. But for us, there was a greater goal, and that was we wanted to own the opposite corner of a project we were already wrapping up. And so one napkin turned into 3 projects for us. And so it's not necessarily about the information that is easily accessible, it's how you critically think about that information. So I agree with both of my colleagues up here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more I can add to that because I think they hit on everything. A couple of things I'd emphasize. I'm sorry, I'm Paul from Locale Development, located right here in this building. I think the special sauce thing has to become important to you, though. It's not necessarily an elixir that you have the answers and other people don't, but you have to become an expert in your market. We're seeing volume, and just like anything, as you see more and do more of something, you're going to get better at it. So if you don't have connections where you can see a lot of volume, whether it's a realtor or a wholesaler on your list or your own proprietary research, that's a gap for you that you need to fill. And I think we have the luxury of being in the business where we have that volume, we have all these people coming to us. But in the end, in our partnership, Roman, my partner Roman, who's here, and I are realtors. We have access to Trend. We have access to a lot of other realtors. We have access to wholesalers, and we're out on the streets every day. So you just kind of know, what a good deal is and what one isn't.
Which actually does lead me to the follow-up question, which is how do you identify whether a deal is good or bad? What signs do you look for to let you know this is worth pursuing, or I should leave this on the table?
For us, it's about what our desired goal was. So let's use our projects on 52nd Street, for example. For us, it was about community. It was about building a walkable corridor. It was about building a stable environment for the first investment that we made. Because when we built the first project, we couldn't get the appraisal number that we thought we'd get. And even though we received the rents that we told the appraisers we were going to get, even though we rented the commercial space for more than we thought we were going to, we still could not get our appraisal number. And it became about a perception. It became about a value perception. Well, how do you change that value perception? You buy the property across the street, the one that's vacant with the windows boarded up, and you change the perception by changing that building. And so for us, when the project came to us on a napkin, it wasn't about, can we just make $1? It was about, can we make an impact on our project? Can we solidify this block as being part of a corridor that was more friendly and more walkable and more connected to the residential neighborhood around it? And what ended up taking place was we now have 5 projects on that intersection. There's another developer who we coattailed on. We were not the first ones there, but his projects were much smaller. And he now has 4 projects there. And so between us, we have collectively created almost 25 units in vacant buildings that didn't exist 5 years ago with 7 commercial spaces. And they're all lit up. And they all have security cameras. And they're all, not vacant any longer. And now it's a walkable corridor, which it wasn't before. And so for us, the deal isn't just about the dollars. It's also about the impact that we can make on the community, because once we do one right, we can do 10 more just based on that reputation we created. So for us, it's a bigger picture than just the money.
All right, so the way I look at it, I had a mentor that told me, you never want to be first, but it's always good to be second or third. So kind of touching on what Ryan said, it's like, right? Sometimes it can be good to be first. Sometimes it is good. But I learned, too, the hard way one time, it wasn't good to be first up in a different market. We do some projects up in the Lehigh Valley, and I was like, oh, this seems like a good market to flip. Flip the house, really didn't make that much money on it. Learned that apartments were better. So now I'm kind of the first up there doing apartments in this area of Easton. But similar situation happened down here in the Whitman area. I don't know if Vince Vinay's here, V2 Properties, or anyone knows Vince. But Vince is doing 60 properties, and on the last panel I sat with, he was saying he's doing 60 properties between 3 blocks south of Snyder and all the way up through Passyunk. So, it's also getting in the car and driving around the city, right? Identifying, wow, why are there so many new constructions around 6th and Snyder, right? And then another, friend, Joe, who's out there, he's doing some projects in that area, and it's like, okay, I'm third, right? So literally we're building a house. Speaking of sourcing deals, a realtor is walking with a client going, need to sell this, sees our director of construction and goes, do you know someone who might want to buy this, right? It's like, there's a way to find a deal, but then it's also, wow, there's 60 properties happening from a big-time developer who's got a lot of money, he's in the news all the time, why is he building down here? So that's kind of something we look for, is like trends of what other people are doing. And back to the data situation, you guys can go on LNI's website, Google a property address you see, you can know what permits are being pulled, what they're building there. It's all knowledge and data that you have access to be able to find out what's going on throughout the city.
To kind of add to both of those, the community is huge, right? So anytime you're going to do a building that you're going to develop, whether it be apartments, commercial, if it's not good for the community, you probably shouldn't be doing it anyway. Because one, you want community support, because then once you do one building, great, they want you to do the next building. Helps you get through variances, any other zoning issues you might have. So community first. After that, to what Brian was saying, it's, what else is coming around there? We're also guys who don't really like to be first, but second and third is great. But
along with that, for us, it's not all about the numbers, but the numbers obviously, do help. So we look, the way we do things is that, we raise a lot of private equity. Because of that, we have investors who need certain returns. So we look at first, are we better in the community? We won't do anything unless we honestly believe that it is. After that, we look at a cash-on-cash return. How much money are we actually getting after that? If we put in $100 and we're going to get $115, okay, is our 15% cash-on-cash return? That's what we expect, right? And that's kind of been our minimum threshold. That's only because we have investors. Other investors might look at what's called an IRR, which is kind of like a 5-year projection, and from there, what are we going to sell that for later on? It's more about the appreciation, getting the equity to build that. But for us, it's cash on cash because we're a long-term hold type guy. So it's just a matter of what you're looking for. Know your required return and what your investment criteria is up front. So if you can identify your 3 to 4 factors of this is what it is in order for me to invest, then at that point when you go to actually start analyzing all the deals, you already know it. You're not just trying to speculate later on. So for us, it's Main Street, public transportation, the return, and overall risk. What factors can we not control that's a risk? And if we can control most of those factors, or at that point we're comfortable with it.
Yes.
Yeah, I hope I don't go last every time, or I'm not going to have anything to say. Hold on. I'm just joking. It's fine. There's just one thing I'd add. I'm going to assume that a lot of people in the room are individual investors. I don't know. I didn't see the guest list, but if you are, there's the spectrum that we were just talking about of metrics that you're meeting. And you obviously have to have solid metrics. And if your deals comfortably meet those metrics, that's probably an indication that the deal's good, right? Well, we were meeting with some bankers the other day, and the other end of the spectrum is when particularly new investors, I did it myself when I first started investing. Oh, I have a deal. Well, if the market goes up, 7.5% more than it did last year, then I could make this deal work if I get 100% financing. And like you're doing mental gymnastics and math gymnastics to make the deal work. And banks were kind of buying into that. 10 years ago, that's why we got into the trouble we got into. They're not anymore, so it kind of helps you keep your discipline. In any case, always keep your discipline. That's sort of the point. If you keep your disciplines, then you're going to stay away from bad deals more often than not.
Now, what we're talking about here is just a little more complicated than buying a house. You buy a house, you go get a mortgage, you pay off the mortgage. But here we're talking about buying houses or commercial properties in order to fix them up or improve them, and eventually to earn income off them either by selling them again or collecting rent from tenants. And that means you got to do a little bit different on the financing side. So the next question I want to ask is, how do you get the money? How do you put together your finance?
How do you put together your finances? Well, that's changing. I would say things are starting to tighten, not because the market's getting worse or softening, but maybe because banks are getting nervous just having all the money out there. That's what we're hearing from bank after bank after bank. You can come with great credit scores, you can come with private investment, you can come with lots of equity in the deal, and they're still going to limit you on the number of deals you can do with them. Maybe you go to another bank to get financing, and you bring the same package, and because they haven't worked with you before, maybe they're willing to take a chance. It's definitely getting a little bit tighter. I don't know if you guys are seeing that. As far as getting the financing, obviously each bank has its own criteria, but all the stuff you guys are used to is going to be there, right? You got to have credit scores, you got to have some equity in the deal. They want to see skin in the game. Even if you're a developer and the skin is brought from other people, they want to see some skin that you're, going to put in, and that's usually in the form of a non-recourse guarantee. And if you can get a recourse guarantee, a regular guarantee, if you can get a non-recourse guarantee, that's great. But you're probably not going to get one from the banks that are lending in this space, at least the spaces that we're in.
Anybody else?
Sure. So, similar. What we try to do is really build relationships with banks who we know lend, in our space. So we're that mid-range developer. We're 20 to 50. We'll go up to 100 units for the right project. But we go to like the regional banks that we can build relationships with. The First Trust banks, Monument banks, people who are local, and then at that point, once you build that relationship, you have that trust, right? So after that, not only do they already trust and know that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, we know what their underwriting criteria is, right? So if you can't underwrite your own deal to what the bank is going to be comfortable with, it's almost not even worth sending it over to them, right? But it's a matter, so each bank's going to be a little bit different. Make sure your debt service is right. Make sure everything else on there, of what you're looking for is accurate. If you go in there and say, I'm going to rent this place for $2,000 and it's a $1,000 market, the bank knows that. So make sure that your numbers are accurate before you go in there, put them together in an organized manner so that it's easy for them to interpret and that you can explain it easily without having to go into depth and they just look at a sheet of paper. And just keep building that relationship. Go to bank and keep making yourself known until they want to do business with you.
Now, there are some other sources for money besides bank. How do you determine where to turn to these other sources, when, how much?
Yep. So we do that. So we're not real big with the banks. We do our projects typically with private investors as well as hard money lenders. There's a lot of unique things happening on the tech scene for hard money investors right now. There's like crowdfunding for deals. So there's hard money investors out there that actually will put your deal up on their website and allow people to invest actually in your deal. Their underwriting's a lot more strict. Like they have to make sure that your project's going to work. But there's hard money lenders out there that will literally fund your deal through other people's investment. The best, obviously, is private money, right? You have a lot more flexibility. You're not running a Ponzi scheme, right? But you can bring people in with different factors, like, oh, hey, loan on this deal, we'll give you a % at the back end, or you pay them as you go throughout the project. So, personally, I think the private side's more flexible, but
yeah, we've found the private side to be quite flexible at this point, and we've actually turned to the private side. Prior to that, we were doing the local bank scene, and our projects are up to 20 units, and in areas where values have not gone up to a point where we could max out on our loans. So we were trying to keep our dollars at like a 70% LTV at the end of the day so that we could make the numbers work because the values just weren't there. And what ended up taking place was it was about relationships. It was about knowing the banker, getting to understand their underwriting process before we even submitted the application and the package, because we wanted them to understand what our goals were with the project, and we wanted to understand what their goals were with their money. And then what has taken place is we've used that same tactic on the private side. We've gone the hard money route as well. I mean, I think that we all have done that at some point in time. And that has worked for us, and then it's been a detractor for us at the same time. Sometimes that money is too expensive, and the project is goes sideways on you in one way, shape, or form, whether it's through zoning or through a collapse in our case. And so what you want to make sure is that at the end of the day that your relationship is there, so that if something goes sideways, you have the ability and some flexibility to work out that capital with whoever that is. So for our sakes, the hard money lender didn't want to stay in our deal. We were able to actually work it out with them so that we could find another bank, enough time to find another bank to take them out. And we actually reconfigured that deal into being a bigger project than what we originally anticipated. But without that relationship, you have nothing. And so it doesn't matter whether it's a hard money lender, a local bank, or someone on the private side. It starts with the relationship and an understanding of what their goals are, and have them understand what your goals are.
I'm going to go off script for just a second since you mentioned crowdfunding. I want to throw out a hypothetical here, but one of the things I'd like to see is the democratization of investment. Encouraging as many people as possible to become investors, to get involved in the game, to learn the business. There's an app called Acorns. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's a stock investing app. Basically what it does is if you make a purchase at a store, it rounds it up to the nearest dollar and puts the spare change into a mutual fund. I don't know whether anything like that is available for real estate, whether it should be, or whether it would work. And I'd like to get your ideas on the virtue of that, if there isn't.
You're telling me that you're going to make a purchase of milk, and there's going to be 4 cents left over, and your 4 cents is going to go in my pocket so I can go buy more real estate? I'm in.
Like that.
Yeah, what do I got to give you, 8%? I'm in. Let's make that happen. I think that at the end of the day, that flexible funding is important to any real estate investor, developer, et cetera. It doesn't really matter how big or small you are. I think that if the returns make sense for the project that you're looking at, then you want that. That's what you want as a developer. It gives you flexibility. If I knew that there was $25,000 sitting in a pocket somewhere that was ready for a specific deal that was going to pump out a 10% return, I would use the relationships I had from the first question you asked,
Yep.
right? That funnel of people that I have out there, whether it's a real estate agent or a wholesaler or someone in the community, and I would reach out and say, I've got this pot of money, this is what I'm looking for, and go seek it out. And I might leverage that $25,000 that came from that crowdsource into a $400,000 quad, right? And so without that opportunity, that 4-unit building never happens for this company, right? My employees don't have a job to build that building, right? So your milk purchase turns into a job 18 months from now for 4 Philadelphians on my framing crew. And so my attitude is do it, start it. If it doesn't exist, Sandy, it's all you, man.
All right. Now you mentioned jobs, and this is another stuff that's kind of important. And we're going to look at it though from this side in terms of who you get to do the work. Who do you hire? Do you have your own construction crews? Do you use a general contractor? Do you hire a manager? Do you go union or non-union? And are there times when you want to do one or not the other? What are the things that go into your determining how you build and who you use to build?
We have our own affiliate, which builds for us. So we're a general contractor for our own projects. That's a huge advantage for a builder in our space, 10, 20 units. We typically don't work with unions. I guess there's times when you're either forced to or you want to, and we haven't really met that. I don't know if you have, Ryan. You're in a similar space as we are. I think having control over the contracting is critical. I mean, whether you're an individual investor and you have a relationship with a contractor, or you control the entity yourself and you are the GC, obviously that's where we derive most of our value. Value engineering is a critical part of our development. And by that, I mean designing a project that meets your needs, not necessarily the needs of the people who are involved, your vendors, whether it's your architect or structural engineer or somebody else may have an idea that they want to use for a project, but you may be thinking this project is a long-term hold that you want to squeeze as much value out of as a rental unit. Well, there's a lot of decisions from the minute you put a shovel in the ground to the minute you finish it that you can make to get the right value. You may be building condos in a high-end neighborhood, completely different thought process. So having your own philosophy and crew, whether they're working for you and you're on the same page or you own them, is critical.
You guys build big stuff.
Yeah. So we also have our own general contracting company, which is it's been huge for us. Same reasons you get the value engineer your projects, right? So rather than you going out, getting a plan from an architect, giving it to another builder, they're going to build exactly to that spec, right? I mean, you don't have much flexibility, but when you're your own general contractor, they get to look at it, and they've done so many projects, they can see from a different perspective where else can they save money. From materials, the way they do different assemblies, whatever it ends up being, you can save money that way. So now all of a sudden you get full control of your scope, your timelines, a lot of your pricing. So we're our own general contractor, which means we do obviously hire out different subs. So any community that we go into, we try to hire locally as much as possible. It's one of the promises that we try to go into every community with and say, hey, we're going to do whatever we can to hire within the community. And not only that, we're also going to try to teach them so that the next time they have a project, they don't necessarily need us. They can go do it themselves. So we kind of prided ourselves on that as well. As far as unions go, it really depends on the size. You'll find most unions, 10 units or lower. If you get involved with a union, they basically price themselves out of the job, and they understand that. But as you get larger, once we hit 40, 50 units, a lot of times you have to go union. But it all depends on the price. So we've been able to work with them pretty successfully with subs that are union and non-union, and how many people they have on there who are prevailing wage to make the job work for us, and go work with them and say, hey, look, here's the real numbers. You charge me this, I can't make this job work, which means we have vacant land and we're not bettering the community. So once they understand that, they work with us, say, all right, the job goes from X to Z, and then all of a sudden we get it down. It might be a little bit more expensive, but everybody's happy. So it's all about that compromise when you get larger and working with the union. So it's fortunately sometimes you have to pay a little bit more, But they still do a great job. It's just a matter of finding the right guys and negotiating the price.
So we have a little bit of a luxury over at DB. We have in-house architects, we have a real estate marketing company, and we have a construction firm all in-house. 90% of what we do is client-based, and 10% is our own. So it's from I want to start back at the architecture side, because one of the biggest things, and mention it down there, is about value engineering and trying to save as much money. But it also goes in the reverse too. I will say our architecture firm has made clients millions and millions of dollars from finding extra space for people, but also designing it in a way that we can understand exactly how it's going to be built in the field. The way I typically explain it to clients is, Toyota just doesn't print out a blueprint and say, go, right? And then they just start assembling it on the floor. So we approach it a little bit differently. We're actually understanding our costs in the architectural side. So we're in-house quantifying the amount of lumber that goes into the house, the amount of drywall that goes into a house, and we're able to cost value engineer that before we even submit a permit. So now here's the flip side. Now it comes to, I'm in the field and we're building. The great thing is, not only, well, for one, we're hiring local, Brazilians, Russians, right? It's everyone knows there's a ton of people you can get to build your stuff. So we have 5 people in-house that are handling about 20 projects right now. We have 2 in the field. And the other thing too about who do you hire is, like, it's expensive to keep people on payroll that are in the field, because their workers' comp is 20% of their payroll. I don't know where's the insurance guy around here, but where Matt Heller's at. Where's he at? I can tell you, it's about 20% of their salary, right, for workers' comp for a guy swinging a hammer in the field. So it's not cheap. So it's obviously more productive to hire outside, subcontractors, but you should have 3 frame crews you work with, 3 drywallers, 3 plumbers, 3 electricians that you can call on and bid your projects out. But also having the data up front to know if their bid's accurate is key, right? So if we know that there's this amount of trim going into a house, we know the price that you can buy that trim at and what it should cost to install it, as opposed to just getting a number and going, I don't know, does that make sense? We kind of already have that data at our fingertips and know what these houses should be on the design development side. So that helps out a lot.
I'm going to add to everything that these guys said, because we also run our own construction crew. We have an affiliate company that does both third-party work and our own. And making payroll is painful. Paying the workers' comp is painful. We just got a letter from the city of Philadelphia. We're all getting audited, which should be a blast. If you got your letter today, congratulations. Welcome to the fun. But one of the things that's been really challenging for us as a company and a young company is the subcontractors, right? We might have our GC license, but we don't have a plumbing license. We don't have a sprinkler license. We don't have the ability to pull the fire permit, right, for the fire alarm. And so one of the things that's been challenging for us is helping to manage these contractors and helping to manage both their expectations of cash flow, the flow of the job. And one of the things that we've started to do, and I have one tomorrow morning, is all of these contractors meet on site for a meeting, and they don't necessarily need to be the owner. It could be the guy who's going to be running the crew for that particular company, but they have to be there. And if they don't, they get penalized in their contract. And they all signed off on it. This is some of these jobs. This is the 3rd, 4th, and 5th job that they've all participated in with us. And what we've done is it allows for a line of communication, because what we've learned as a young company is 2 things. They don't communicate with each other, no matter what. Even if they say they did, yeah, the HVAC guy talked to the electrician. He knows exactly where he needs to be. Doesn't even matter if it's on the drawings. The other thing that we realized was that they don't have an expectation of cash flow. And so as you start out in your investment career, make sure that your contractor, whether you're doing the work and you hired an HVAC guy, has an expectation of what your timeline is. How long is this project really going to be? When is their job going to be finished? And what we started to do was set these meetings twice a month on site with our team leader, which is our in-house GC, and set the stage. And what we found is it's smoothed lines of communication, and it's allowed them to bridge their cash flow better for us. And so they're not knocking on our door asking for money 6 weeks in advance of them actually doing their work.
Well, now let me get back. You were the one who was talking about materials, drywall, lumber, things like that. But we also need, go to things like, fits and finishes, paint, cabinets in the kitchen, whether or not you use those lights that everybody complains about because it's hard to change the bulbs on. What goes into your decision about what level of finishes, what materials to use in the building? Do you go down to Home Depot or do you actually?
We actually have a simple rule.
Yep.
The first rule is I let my wife pick it out. That's the first rule. Because I painted an apartment yellow once, and that was the end of that. Like, that was it. I was done. But the other rule is that we won't build something that our staff and ourselves as owners won't live in. So if we're not comfortable with it, if we don't believe that it's a respectable place to raise a family, to have a life, to call your home, it won't be built. So it doesn't matter whether it comes from Home Depot or AAA cabinets, whether it's a custom-built ADA kitchen or whether it's 5-inch wide hardwood floor versus laminate. If it's not something that we feel we can walk into every single solitary day and be proud of, that this is our home, it's not getting built by our company. It's just that simple.
Any of the rest of you care to chip in on this? We talk about value engineering. Can we, is there such a thing as value design, and what value?
Yeah. I mean, back to finishes I can touch on. I mean, back to my story about the properties in South Philadelphia. You bet your ass I went on Trend and looked at every V2 property in that area to see what they were doing, right? So that's another thing, I don't have a wife yet, but I mean, at some point you have other people that, you can take, creative ideas from and know the type of cabinets they're using, know whether they're doing the waterfall granite. Oh, they're not. Well, my house will have the waterfall granite, so it's just that extra little sizzle feature, right? But, the one thing I will recommend, and we try to do with our clients, is like systemize it. You shouldn't really, be changing it every house. I mean, you can, but, it's like you put the safe in the master closet. It's just like the little things.
Yeah.
But
I will say this about Vince Viney. I have interviewed him. I did a feature on him on this, and he does have the whole process of making it a system down. He's almost like Levitt there in terms of, how efficiently he does it all.
No.
Not yet.
Not yet.
The only thing I'll add to that is that the neighborhood will drive some of this too. If you go into a neighborhood association meeting, which we've had this experience, and we're going to put something that looks very modern in a neighborhood where everything's pointed brick, you have to be mindful of the neighbors' reaction to that. That's where it comes back to working with your architects. Your architects can really help you there, help you save money and face when you go in there to a neighborhood association and you put some crazy design that they don't want in their neighborhood and you face friction.
Yeah, I mean, to add just a little bit to what everybody else said too, I mean, a material can cost less and still look great. Don't make something look cheap. Hire somebody who knows what that neighborhood wants, what that area wants. We kind of approach it the same way as Brian does. As far as the system goes, pretty much every year we go, okay, this is going to be our spec for this year, and we'll make something just a little bit different in each building. So like something that we like to call like just noticeably different, right? Whether you're flipping a house, selling a house, doing an apartment, everything should just be something just noticeably different compared to your competitor, right? So when you walk in, what's going to pop to somebody that somebody else might not do, right? So you look at like something as simple as a thermostat. You do like a Nest thermostat, someone walks in, and that perceived value is so much higher than the $200 it cost you, right? So just those little things like that, but systemizing it so you can get your product or your materials at a discounted price when you're ordering in bulk and things like that makes things a lot easier. Get somebody who can pick it out for you so you know it's going to look great, and just make it just noticeably different so that it stands out just a little bit more than your competitors.
So we've gone over, how you determine what to buy, how do you get the money to buy it, what you do when you build it, who do you hire, what do you use. But now let's get to the next question, which is, how do you figure out where you want to build, where you want to buy? And maybe we'd like to talk to you because in the 30 years I've lived here, this city has undergone some dramatic changes. The city we're in right now is not the same city that it was, 20, 10, or even 5 years ago. It's a lot different. Things are moving out You know, Center City used to be Vine to Pine. Now they talk about Girard Avenue to Tasker Street. Where do you think are good places to look for perhaps future growth? You know, because let's say you want to invest in, well, maybe you're not going to make a killing, but make a much better than average return. Are there places where you think that might be more achievable? What are some of the issues? Let me throw it out to you.
I mean, you guys are building in West Philly, right? But you're closer to the universities than we are. We are outside of the University City District, which gets so much press. I'm a huge believer in that neighborhood, and that goes for anything from Southwest Philly to actually West Philly. And so if you're talking 50th Street West to 56, I'm incredibly bullish. I think the price points are perfect. I think that the opportunities are great. I think that at the end of the day, that a family can be raised and you're 10 minutes from the stadium, 15 minutes from the airport, 15 minutes from Center City. You're in the heart of the action in terms of, you know, Center City expanding its borders to 40th Street. I'm a big believer in the opportunity that West Philadelphia presents. Obviously, there are challenges when building in an emerging market, and that is, you know, issues of gentrification, issues of community involvement in density. And so I highly recommend that if you choose West Philly, get involved in the communities, understand what the needs are, just like we have, so that you can get an understanding of how to make a dollar, how to build what you want to build, but at the same time, get a feel for making a smart investment in West Philly.
Yeah. So how we approach it is, I went to school for architecture, so I have a little bit of different look. You know, I was trained to problem solve and look at things from a macro to micro level very quickly and efficiently. When I look at the city and go, where's the development going? I first look at the arteries of the city. I mean, Broad Street. People are wondering why they're building 30 triplexes up by Temple North. People are wondering why Packer Park is a hot area right now. People are wondering why this development is pushing all the way up through Kensington and up past over the tracks where they, you know, the city just cleared out, you know, the heroin encampment. You know, people are wondering, why is this happening? Well, how do you get to work in the morning? How do you travel to the Phillies game? How do you, you know, experience the city very quickly? You know, I heard a talk online, like, you know, 10 years from now, people aren't going to have cars, right? It's like, you know, because cars are going to pick you up, they're going to drive you around, but no one wants to take a lift to work every day. So you also need to look at the, you know, the functions of the city and how it's working, you know, train systems. But again, back to, you know, I kind of use my gut a little bit.
So what's your gut tell you?
My gut tells me I don't have any holdings in the city. I just do, you know, flips and ground up new construction. My gut, I actually, we were talking on the podcast, we do stuff up in the Lehigh Valley. That's where our holds are. Just very different market. You walk down in L&I, hey Brian, hey Mike, how's it going? Right? Just very different and different cap rates. But, you know, I'm not saying get out of Philly, but there's still a ton of opportunity here. But just knowing macro and micro, why am I up in the Lehigh Valley? Well, Amazon and UPS have two of the biggest distribution hubs up there right now, fueling people that are renting 2-bed, 1-bath apartments from me for $1,150 a month. I don't know. And the build rates up there are a lot cheaper for buy and holds, but I'd rather flip and build new construction down here in the city because there's a bigger demand for it. So it's just macro, micro, very quickly looking at what's going on within 50 miles of the city.
Yeah, I'll just add something to what Ryan was talking about. Actually, corridor theory came up at the BizNow conference in June. There's somebody who was up there saying, find a corridor and build along a corridor. It's interesting to say that, but billions of dollars have been spent developing the city, as you said. In certain areas, the cap rates have plummeted, right? Because we know that it's a safe area to build in, just like Manhattan, right? You're building in Center City, your cap rate's not going to be as good as East Kensington. If you look at where development has happened and all of these billions of dollars have gone in, particularly look at this neighborhood, Northern Liberties. Cap rates aren't great in this neighborhood because it's awesome to live here. And, you know, and people know it, and people know if they build something, it's going to sell, and people are going to want to live there. Well, if you go on the fringes of these neighborhoods, a lot of value there, right? the investment's still here in these anchor neighborhoods. Well, if you go just a few blocks, I was in the gym the other day talking to this kid who just bought a place, 24 years old, he bought a place for $100,000 less than 6 blocks, east. So, and he did that on purpose. That was an intentional move. He wasn't just like, oh, look at this neighborhood. He said, I'm going to build here because they just built all that stuff out and people are going to keep wanting to be near it. And I want to be near it, but I don't want to pay, $600. I want to pay $450. So, something to think about.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the fringe neighborhoods is really where we kind of got our start, how we started to grow, right? We mentioned earlier we wanted to be second and third in there, but when you're building in something that's already established, you're paying too much up front, especially when you're just starting out to really start making money. So when it is all public knowledge and you can go to the zoning archives and see where building permits are being pulled, you know where it's pushing, right? So you see where the heart is, and then hit that fringe area and say, okay, just be confident that's where it is pushing to, right? Now you can get it a little bit cheaper. And if you can build an A product that you're renting at a B price, well, the ones that had to build in new, more new in the heart of it, chances are their product has to be just a little bit less in order to make that affordable. So if you can offer a little bit better product, people are willing to live there and start to push out and pay just a little bit less for a great product. Along the transit lines is great. People have to get to work. The way the city zoning changed recently, I mean, they're making it more of a transient city, right? Parking requirements are less stringent, so all of a sudden people don't have cars, so they can't put them anywhere. So you have to have, the trains and things like that you're building around. And I would just say, just be careful of how far out in the fringe you are. As we're starting to come down, like the economic bell curve down, right? If things start to go a little more sideways and we were to go back into another recession in a year or 2 years, whatever that might be, that at that point, the more insulated you are, the better you are. Like Center City's rents won't drop that much. But if you built on the fringe, they're going to get hit first and it all kind of comes in. So I'd say be careful. But so if you are going to try to start out, the fringe areas are great, but make sure you're building on the right side. So if it's pushing north, don't go buy something south just yet.
Okay, your turn now. Open up to questions you have from the floor. Anything you want to ask? Just raise your hand. I'll take the mic to you.
Are any of you gentlemen looking at the possibility of building senior housing or any kind of stuff like that as a population is aging?
It's a great question. So we are actually looking at a multitude of things. So we are looking at twofold. We have come to find that when we build an ADA handicap accessible apartment, which we've built at least one in the last 3 buildings that we've done, and although the building code requires you to build one for certain size units, we go a little bit further than that, and so we actually build a fully accessible unit. So not just the bathroom and the doorways and the fact that you can get into the apartment, but even down to the appliances are all ADA. We have found them to go faster and to actually have gone for, in some cases, more money than we would have anticipated regular units. So that's one. We have a huge concern for ADA units. The second is that we've looked into both accessibility from that perspective and affordability. And so I sit on the working group for Quino Sanchez's bill for inclusionary housing. And although there are parts of that bill that I, as a developer, just can't stand, there are certain aspects of that bill that I think are admirable. As a company, we have a project that we're working on right now that's in the design phase, where we are trying to self-subsidize at least 10% of the building for affordable units at 30% AMI. Because we want to see if we can do it. We believe in the community. We think that there's a need to have that. We think the system is broken from an affordable housing standpoint. And so for us, not that 2 units in a 20-unit building is going to make a huge dent, but we want to see if we can be a part of the solution instead of part of the problem.
Yes.
You spoke earlier about City Atlas program, which levels the playing field. Could you elaborate on that further?
Yeah, so I don't know, has anyone seen, there's a Philly Curbed article that just got put out recently. Anyone see that article? No? You guys don't read Philly Curbed? So the city's releasing a it's pretty much a tech item, which is combining L&I records, zoning records, all these mapping over top of each other. So you can go to one source and not have to go to the stormwater map, not have to go to all these different places.
Stormwater map is my favorite.
What is it?
Stormwater map is my favorite.
It's my favorite.
I love
too.
that map.
And do a little measuring tool, figure out who owns it and what they owe on their water bill. But you know, it's going to help because I can touch a little bit on the process to get a building through, and maybe back to senior living, why developers would rather just choose to go with apartments versus, you know, if they're going to spend the time, money, and energy it takes to get something through L&I, you know, I think they're moving apartments. But also, to your point, this is going to help, I think, speed things up for developers where they can have one central thing. And also, the city is training people on it, too. So they're hosting, like, I think it's twice a year now. One of our clients actually just went to the last one, but they're hosting to teach people how to use the software. So it's the City Atlas, Philadelphia Atlas.
So Atlas is great, and there's also a private website that obviously costs money, but it started by Philadelphian Stacy Mosley, started FixList, and so FixList does sort of what Atlas does. It takes it to another extreme. It shows you building permits, it shows you valuations, it shows you what you want to do in terms of if you're looking for a particular market, you can set a search and it will tell you what properties are available or what properties are vacant or have violations and give you that owner information for the search that you created for that neighborhood. So if Atlas isn't operational or doesn't do everything you want it to, check out FixList. FixList. Yep. FixList.
Hi guys, how are you? So I have two questions. First one is, obviously, like we know that rents in the CBD are like pushing higher and higher, and like as they're getting like close to $4 a foot. How do you guys feel about like the co-living, fully furnished space in terms of Philly? Like obviously we're not New York or San Francisco yet. Do you guys like feel particularly bullish on that?
We have a client up in the Kensington area that does. They're not fully furnished. Like you're talking Airbnb, like where it's you go like a We Live. So we don't deal with that. We deal a little bit. It's similar, but it's like a live work studio. So we have a client up in the Kensington area that owns must be 400 or 500 units of like warehouse, and we've been slowly helping him, you know, for one, make the buildings, bring them up to code, but also fit out like artist live work type scenarios where you know you have people that'll pay $800,000 for like a 500 square foot room where they can do artwork and also have like gallery space and stuff that's associated with that to display it, and also have like communal spaces in that building as well. So I'm seeing a big trend in that. We're doing a lot of those units right now.
Campus Apartments is building a building that's similar to that concept, and the zoning allowed them to do that for that particular project. The problem that I see for a developer that's our size becomes zoning. That becomes the problem, right? To take that concept to the neighborhood in which we develop, we'd get thrown out. I mean, the zoning meeting would literally last 5 seconds. We would never even make it to the zoning board. And so conceptually, it's great, especially if the market in that neighborhood is ready for it. But from a zoning standpoint, you're going to, you know, we'll get killed in our neighborhood. So I think it depends on your market. I think it depends on your zoning. I think it's a great concept, but it has to be very, very specific to that marketplace.
Yeah. And that's where it happens, like on the fringe zone of where this guy owns these properties. And they were zoned I2, and he actually was getting resistance to do these artist live workspaces. The only reason he got them through and got 30 of them zoned in one of these buildings was because he went there, listen, if you don't give me this zoning, I'm going to rent this I2 building out to a facility that'll be in and out 24 hours. And they were like, no, we want hipsters with bikes. That's literally what they said at the zoning. Right?
It's a great concept, but you need to know that mountain that you're climbing before you even buy that piece of land.
Yeah, I mean, the zoning is huge. I mean, all over the country right now in different areas, Airbnbs and things like that, the short-term rentals are getting so much kickback from different communities that they're actually outlawing them in certain areas that you literally cannot do it. So typically when you start to have that furnished feel, right, you're more short-term. It's a great amenity, you can charge more, but I'd say not just talk to the community and zoning now, because it might be approved today, but what can they outlaw tomorrow? So make sure you know and you're up to date on your legislation, right? Because you have to protect your downside. If you can make money today, but you start to lose money next year because they say you can't do it anymore, you don't want to put all that money up front now. So just make sure you're ahead of that.
Hey, Vince here with TCG Project Management. I just have a quick question, kind of rhetorical question. If you were to give some advice to the group here, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges when it comes to project scheduling and foreseeing delays? I know, Brian, to speak of Design Blends, you like to work with, specifications and having everything down to the last nut and bolt. Can you talk more about what a pre-construction process should look like and how you can mitigate delays by, getting ahead of it early?
Yeah, sure. So let's see. So one thing I will say to just a blanket statement, A to Z. I've had guys that have been doing this since before I was born, and they go, oh, we used to do it this way, we used to do it this way. Doesn't matter anymore. You have to literally go A to Z on your projects, or you'll be shut down. We've had clients that have been threatened $2,000 a day fines on buildings because they wanted to do something without permits, and then they call us and go, help, 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 So the one thing I will say, spend a little extra time planning your project and making sure you have the right team on board. In the due diligence stages, obviously a feasibility study, getting with a good architecture firm, understanding the cost of your building, the design, the amount of units that you're going to be putting into it. The other piece of it too is, looking at the backside. Are you going to be marketing it? What's your out strategy for this? Do you put together a website, visuals to kind of, get that thing pre-sold and pre-leased before you put a shovel, or do you say, I don't want to do that? Some developers don't. But I will say the wild card and to plan for it is L&I. I was on the phone with a client today. We have 21 projects down at L&I for clientele at the moment. They're all in various stages. They're all in zoning, but I will tell you, not one of them is a layup. There's no layups at all down at L&I. A client comes to us, goes, hey, I got a piece of land. I want to have you build a house, design a house, build it. When can I expect it done? I literally say to them in a room, 365 days from today. And that's how long it's taking right now to build a single-family home in a city from ground up, to go through the whole process. So just make sure you have the right team involved, whether you're getting a project management firm, whether you're getting, you're hiring your own GC or a multitude of different subcontractors. Make sure you allot for the amount of time it's really going to take.
Call L&I in the afternoon, because in the morning they're all out in the field.
Yeah, that's another good option. And they don't, the other thing too is, you used to be able to just go sit and wait for a review, or you actually have to schedule now. It's literally changing down in L&I week to week. And I know it's hard for a lot of people in this room to understand that, but when have 21 projects our office, we go down to L&I twice a week to submit new projects, nonstop. They're literally, we feel like weeks, they must have a huddle meeting and go, make sure this week you look for this. And they'll look for something that they haven't seen prior. And there's still conflicts between the legislation down at L&I, between L&I, how they interpret overhangs on your first floor versus how streets department determines what your overhang should be.
Be polite.
Yeah. No, but I'm just there's a problem right now. It's still not fixed, and it's getting better. They're doing, permit tracking is one thing they just implemented, which is great. You can punch in now your AP number and know where your project stands, know the date it got received, but it's
Hey, Brian, how often have they lost your drawings?
Pretty frequently.
All the time,
Yeah,
right?
Well,
How is that possible? I still haven't figured that one out.
Well, when you put it in the bin down there into the garbage can, and they have to go from garbage can. No, it has. They are going digital though. That's going to help. They're making a push to go so that you can submit your drawings digital. We heard through a little grapevine. That's going to help. It's going to get us closer to a New York status when you're submitting permits. But just account for delays. Stuff happens all the time. It's not. I will say it's not L&I's fault, but just know. I was speaking on a panel not too long ago at Vince's event over at a Sugar House. It's not that bad. I have a client, or not a client, a mentor of mine out on the West Coast. He's building out in the Palm Springs area. It takes 1.5 years to get permits through. So it's not that bad compared to other areas. But just plan for it because it's going to happen. You're going to have delays, whether it's your contractor, whether it's weather. 1 year to build a house, sometimes even more. In your case, how long does it take for your stuff?
Really depends. I mean, single family homes, something like that, probably 6 months to 12 months for that whole development, depending on, before we can actually start building. Multifamily can be a little bit longer. My only suggestion is if you're not 100% familiar with that process, hire a professional who is, don't try to navigate it yourself. But get down there, get familiar with it. On top of that, because it does take longer, make sure you know your holding costs. You're paying interest, you're paying utilities, you're whatever else you're paying on that. Make sure you're accounting for those because they add up quickly. And then really, I guess, on top of that, I would say just make sure you plan. I mean, if you don't know how long it's going to take, you're kind of screwing yourself over there. Just be ready for it.
I was wanted to ask about going into these neighborhoods that are on the fringes. How do you really guarantee that you're going to get the appraisal that you need? You don't always have the comps for, say, a gut rehab or a new construction. So I worry about going in there and not being able to get my money back out when I do my, trying to do refinance and get my money back out of it because it didn't appraise at what I needed to without it having the right comps.
There is no guarantee. That's the short answer.
Conservative lease estimates and sale prices, and don't go too deep. Somebody said this earlier. Don't go too deep. I think it was you, into the fringe. Like stay literally at the fringe and not too deep into that neighborhood.
Or just be second or third.
Right.
I have somebody who is who works for us who's trying to get into the game, as we all have been at some point. And the thing that I kept saying to them is buy and build it for 70 cents on the dollar. And make sure that you have the ability to have some room for movement. Because if you're assuming that you're going to refinance this thing at 75% of its value, I guarantee you're not right. I almost guarantee you're not right. And so have yourself some flexibility. And the other thing is that if you can, and depending on the project, have multiple exit strategies. If it was a duplex with an owner's unit and the goal was to flip it, make sure that the rents cover your expenses and make you some money that if you can't sell it, you can rent that unit out. So if you have a project that you're looking at that's on the fringe and you can situate that project to have multiple exit strategies, it's much better for you should the market change 12 months from now when the project's actually finished.
Last question.
Hi, guys. Thanks for your time. You've been very informative. Thank you. Just want to know, when the goal is to flip or sell, do you incorporate staging into your projects?
I was just going to say, I think it's incredibly effective. We haven't been doing that. I think we might have to in the future because if you're building in an area where that's coming up, you want it to look a certain way, to fit that neighborhood. And I think that that's a value add that your realtor can help you with if you hire a realtor. Do you work with realtors? Oh, are you? Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I think it's a great, I mean, the houses that I've seen staged, I saw some on Frankfurt that I think it's OCF was done. They were staged. They were phenomenal looking. I think they sold very quickly. I mean, it's also a hot neighborhood, but they didn't spare that expense because it just made a world of difference. I mean, conceptualizing something is different than actually seeing it.
Yeah, so we stage as much as possible. It always helps it sell. Pictures look better. You get more traffic in there. And then it's just always a numbers game. How much traffic do you need in order to sell? But it depends on the area. If you're building in such a hot area, you might not need to. But if it's competitive, stage. I mean, it's not that much money. Do it, and it's well worth it. It definitely outweighs the holding cost.
I'm going to jump in here for a minute because one of the things I do at Philadelphia Magazine is pick houses to feature for our daily house posts. And one of the hardest things I think any potential buyer can do is to fill an empty room with their imagination. You know, it's people may have their own furniture. It's probably not going to look like what it was in stage, but if all they have are like 4 walls and a wood floor, they're going to have a hard time envisioning what it's going to look like. You put furniture in it for them, that helps them figure out what the possibilities for the space is. And he says it doesn't cost too much. It certainly make me more likely to feature the home.
Yep. So to answer your question, maybe you've seen it on IKEA magazine, right? You know 95% of those images are virtually done. So the other thing too, so staging 100%, if it's in your budget, you can afford it, you got to stage it. There's nothing like actually walking in and seeing it, but it's also to kind of recognizing where your buyers are today. You're sloughing down a sandwich at lunch, maybe browsing Zillow, right? They want to see stuff. So one of the things we do is pre-construction marketing for clients, where we're literally virtually staging a house before a shovel hits the ground to help pre-sell and pre-lease. The other side of the tech too, which depends on your budget. If you need the stage and it's within it, yes, like 100% it's way better. But there is virtual staging. It does exist. It's obviously very affordable, but you need to have a pristine image, and then you can on top of that stage and furniture. But it's just understanding where the market trends are. Staging, there's nothing that beats it, but it's also where's your clientele buying from to understand. So before they even, the house is built.
Well, I would like to thank you all for coming out tonight. This will be available online, right?
These guys were great. Sandy was fantastic. Hey, guys, we're putting together a neighborhood on the rise coming up in the springtime. With Sandy and myself, we're going to be picking neighborhoods that are not talked about. We got a hard money panel coming up in January. Don't forget about a lot of the upcoming events. Keep in mind about our podcast. Anybody thinking about collaborative little workshops and networking events, please let me know. Enjoy the rest of the food network and have a great night.